In 2022, my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. She told my mom, you have a 50-50 chance of being here 1 year from now. That really helped me to recognize that now is the time to go all in on entrepreneurship because I don't know how much time I have.
In this episode, I speak with Tamara Jackson about how she walked away from a successful Fortune 500 career to build faith-driven businesses and even an AI company that has to honor God. She shares how grief, revival, and AI all collide in her story. What I'd love to start an intro you can do the heavy lifting here is your pivot story. I like to call the aha moments, like what prompted you to leave like a very secure, Fortune 500, for entrepreneurship.
Yeah. It's interesting, Eric. When I was growing up, I always knew that I wanted to be a leader. And even back in high school, I was uncertain which path I wanted to take. I still have it in my yearbook. I've looked through it and I literally listed, hey, I want to be a CEO of my own company, or I want to move up the ranks in an existing company, maybe run a division. So I always had kind of in my mind these dual paths. And you mentioned the word that often kind of drives us, right? A sense of security. So I went to college, got the degree, decided, hey, let me find a quote unquote good job. And things started taking off for me. And my corporate career started going really well. I started, getting the salary, the promotions, all the things that I wanted. But about halfway through my corporate journey, there started to be this unsettling within me that there was still more that I was to do. And so my way of handling that was to do both. So for about half of my corporate career, I had side hustles. So maybe someone that's watching us or listening to us can identify with this. So I had a number of ventures over the years, some successful, some not so much, but it was kind of answering that question within me about what more could I contribute. Now, what caused the pivot is a difficult situation. In 2022, my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. So I can still remember the doctor saying, giving us that honest answer to what does this look like? She told my mom, you have a 50-50 chance of being here 1 year from now. So imagine hearing the person that you admire most in the world, the person that you've looked up to, not just as your mom, but as a leader, as a person of faith, realizing that their time on earth is short. So for me, that really helped me to recognize that even though we wake up every day thinking that we are going to have the next day and the next day and the next day, and we plan months and years ahead, that it doesn't always turn out that way. So fast forward, was there with my mom through her journey. In 2023, she did transition. She did not make it a full year. And I remember spending the rest of 2023 really kind of working through that grief process, but also recognizing what she taught me in those final 10 months. One of the things that I recognized is there were lots of things that she wanted to do that she never did. She thought, oh, well, when I retire, I'm going to do this. When I finally, leave my job, I'm going to do this, thinking that she would have the time. And so one of the lessons that she taught me that she didn't even realize that she did is, hey, if there's something that you believe that you're called to do, don't assume that you have time. Now is the time to do it. So it was that realization that caused me to say, you know what? I'm not going to hold on to this corporate job and have my side hustles on the side. Now is the time to go all in on entrepreneurship because I don't know how much time I have. And so maybe that's something that someone listening or watching us really needs to process. If all you have is now, what is it that you should focus your time and your energy on? And when I was faced with that question, I realized, hey, you know what? I really want to do more with podcasting. Really want to be a part of taking the wisdom from the generations that have gone before us and making sure the next generation of leaders has that wisdom. I want to be a part of helping the up and coming founders really be able to tell their story and position themselves for the businesses that will be passed down and the wealth that will change hands. And so for me, it was all about purpose. And sometimes getting that clarity on purpose comes from some really difficult moments. At least that was the case for me.
Wow. I love that. And I love that you came to that realization sooner than later, right? More than enough people think the thing, but never take action, right? And may have those. And I'm sorry to hear about your mom.
Thank you.
People still experience that and don't have the courage
Absolutely.
to take the leap, right?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. It's not easy.
So there's two things there that sort of intersect. Number one is finance, right? So my first question, I have a two-parter, and then I'll remind you what the second one is if I remember it too. But did you do an audit of like, okay, I can take the leap, I can leave this cushy job, for lack of a better word, and security, because I have enough savings here, and then did you plan it all out? And how much of your faith was integrated into that decision?
That's good. So the answer is yes. I definitely did look at, what the financial landscape looked like for me. If you talk to a seasoned financial advisor, they always give you the advice, making sure that you have, X number of months savings set aside. And so for me, I had been blessed to have been working with a financial advisor who was kind of my sounding board and is a part of what I call my wisdom council. So I was able to have the conversation with him and knew that things were okay from a financial standpoint. And here's what's interesting. I think we assume that once that is the case, it just takes all the fears away. That wasn't the case for me, because there still was a realization that, hey, I need to see these things come together and in my mind within X amount of time, because the income that was quote unquote guaranteed is now gone. So when you are used to a certain amount hitting your account on the 1st and the 15th, and you realize, hey, that's not going to happen. And if this doesn't take off, if this doesn't work the way that I hope it does, then, this could end in a direction that I'm really not prepared for. So the concerns, the fears were still there. And that's where the faith really had to come into play of, I just believe that the journey that I had been on over the last year or so prior to this decision was all intentional. It was purposeful beyond, being there for my mom. It was also for me to come to grips with some realities and to make some important decisions. And so there was an element of trust of, I am on this journey with God and he's bringing me to this place. I really believe that. I've prayed about it. I've talked to my financial advisor. I've talked to my counselor. I've involved others in this decision, not just me. And so I have to trust now. I've done all the due diligence that I can do. Now I have to trust that if God is bringing me to this, that he can also take me through this. It doesn't mean that's going to be easy, but that he's going to be with me as I go through that journey.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. So when you took the leap of faith, what was sort of the first steps? Did you know what type of, because I see in your past, there's fitness, there's finance, there's
a lot of things.
Right? There's a lot of things, right? But I love the 3 F's: fitness, finance, and faith, right?
Yeah.
So how did you decide, okay, this is the pillar that I'm going to, I'm going to hold to? Like, how did you decide what business to start building?
Well, one of the things that I've learned from my different side hustle ventures is that you want to make sure that you're introducing something that people actually want. So one of the things that I did was I literally just had conversations with people that I respected and admired. And I just asked them questions about, where they are in their journey, because I knew that I wanted to serve people that are passionate about their faith, but also have a desire to impact the world through ministry or business. And so I set up conversations with people in those spaces that I admired, and I just asked them questions. And then because I learned to have an appreciation, not just for conversations, but for patterns and trends, I looked at like, what are some of the common things that I am seeing and hearing throughout each of these conversations? And then I took that, as something, as a matter for prayer. Okay, God, what do I do with this? And then also, continuing to consult others to have them kind of weigh in, based on, what I've shared. Here's kind of a synopsis of what I've heard from folks. What are your thoughts about some directions forward? So for me, it is definitely about strategy, and strategy involves both looking at data, but it's also a discernment process of trying to hear from God and spending time in reflection and gathering information to be able to make the best possible decision. And, we were talking before we hit record, and you talked about how your show has evolved. And that's been the same for me. Even though I picked the starting point, things evolved over time as I continue to have more conversations, continue to grab, more data, and always trying to be discerning. So that was the starting point. And then I just continue to seek God about what the next steps look like.
Hey, sorry to interrupt this episode, but if you are a business owner who's looking to grow their authority on YouTube and reach a broader audience, please hit me up at eric@onairbrands.com. You can spell it with a K, you can spell it with a C, but ERIK is the normal way, at onairbrands.com. And let's talk about your business. Let's talk about your goals and how YouTube can work for you. Let's get back to the episode. So your business decisions were made from conversations, right? So you extracted as much data and information as you possibly could from people in your circle, in your network that you admired. And then from there, what was the business or businesses? And I know that AI is playing a very powerful role, because at that time, that's when it was popping off, right? I mean, yeah. AI, I think, what, 2023-ish? Was it?
That's when
flying.
Yeah, it is flying. But yeah, as we saw ChatGPT really hit the scene, it really started to take off. Now, here's what's interesting again, Eric, I think one of the things that we have to recognize is God is intentional in all that he does, even things that we think are one-offs. So for me, the journey with AI actually started in 2021. There was this tool that I was doing a lot of marketing then, that some of the marketers that I knew were using this tool called Jasper to help expedite the process of writing copy. And so I remember getting my free trial and testing it out, and I was like, wow, this thing is amazing. And Jasper is a tool, like once you get your hands on it and you see how much it can do, it's really, really hard to let go. So that free trial turned into a subscription. So if you're thinking about starting a SaaS business, give them a free trial. Let them see how awesome it is, because it's an amazing conversion tool. So I had seen the power of Jasper. I knew what AI could do in terms of copy. But when ChatGPT and other players hit the scene, now we have Claude, which is one of my favorites. We have Gemini. We have all of these tools. The question for me became twofold. One, how can you use this beyond writing landing pages and emails? How can we use it beyond that to make an even bigger impact, specifically for small businesses that often don't have the capital to hire a lot of people to grow their business? But then also, how can we ensure that as we leverage AI, we are honoring God in that? It is not something that is used for evil. It is truly used for good. And so, again, kind of reflecting on my experiences, one of the things that was a big challenge in the corporate space, even though we actually had the people, was following up on leads. There would always be this battle between the person that is right in front of you, the email that has just come in, the voicemail that has been left versus the customers that you talked to 2 months ago, 3 months ago. I was in the mortgage business. So if you've ever bought a home, that's a pretty complex process. You're constantly looking at different homes, trying to make a decision on what's right for you and when is the time to actually pull the trigger. So many of our best salespeople, they would recognize, hey, this is a process. It might happen today, but it might be 3 months from now, 6 months from now. But the vast majority of our folks really struggle with that concept. They were focused on the person that's ready to go right now. Well, because I had some pretty decent level visibility into the data, I knew how much money that was costing us to spend thousands, tens and thousands of dollars on a campaign, and those leads just sit there with no one to work them. Fast forward to, my journey as an entrepreneur, as a solopreneur initially, and then over time building a small team, even I had challenges with this. I would be doing my best to keep up with things, but the reality is that things would fall through the cracks. And so through a series of divine events, I recognized, hey, you know what? There is the capability for AI to actually do the heavy lifting with a lot of this follow-up. And so the question became, okay, how can we do this, but not have it sound like AI, if that makes sense? How can we make it human-like and make it feel like an extension of the company rather than something that's been pulled off the shelf and, just plugged a few things in and off it goes. And so as we continue to kind of tinker with this, we realized, hey, with some training, and that's what's something that's really important for our viewing and listening audience to know, is AI is really only as effective as its training. So then we started spending a lot of time really training our AI tools to be able to carry on human-like conversations, which meant that it wasn't so much about pushing a product or booking a call, even though those are end goals. It's about starting that conversation with questions that communicate that you're genuinely interested in them and what they want to accomplish. And so that's where what Lead Reviver is all about, is leveraging the power of AI to re-engage leads, to continue conversations that have already been started, but do it in such a way that feels human, that feels like an extension of the company. And when we do that well, we find that people are ready to take the next step.
So good and so needed. Tam, for sure. What are some of the ethical considerations that you had to take when you were building this?
Yeah, well, one of the big ones is, what is this exactly, right? Because you could say that this is a person that's on the team, because you can give your AI a persona. But at the end of the day, we know that it's still AI. So one of the things that we had to wrestle with is, well, what do we call it? And when we're reaching out to customers or prospective customers, what do we say, right? So that's one thing. Two is, what type of companies do we serve? Because many people can benefit from this service, but are there some kind of hard lines on products and services that you want to be involved in, that I want to be involved in, and others that I don't? So just deciding, who the ideal client is, who the target audience is. And even though a person might be willing to invest, is that necessarily the best client in order to pursue? And then there are even some things like, many people, I'm sure, that are watching and listening to us have experienced this, is, well, what do you do when the person says no? Because the reality of sales is that most of the time, the answer that you're looking for, you're not going to get right away. So how do you handle that in a way that respects the person and also aligns with the principles that we have as faith-driven leaders? So do we just say, okay and go away? Do we cut the person off? Do we get upset with that? Believe it or not, AI is able to take on those different personalities. Or do we show love
Hmm.
and ask some follow-up questions and figure out when is a better time to follow back up? So, the list of kind of things that we had to work through as a company are pretty extensive, but I would argue that these are things that we deal with every day. It's just a matter of they're focused on this particular tool. But as leaders, we're facing questions every day about where we're going to draw the line in our business, who our ideal customer is, how we're going to handle different difficult situations. All of those things are just a part of the journey.
What did you decide in terms of what to call it, how to approach, introducing it?
Yeah. Yeah. And so what we ended up doing is we do give each AI tool that we deploy for our clients a name. So we do give them a name like Christine or Jane or Joe. So we do give them a name. But we don't communicate anything that kind of makes it sound like it's a person. We
Hmm.
also don't build profiles for them on social. That was another thing that we wrestled with. Do we create a profile for them? Because some companies, even as big as Facebook, have done that in the past.
Hmm.
They've created profiles so that this persona can interact with their clients. So we did give a name. We do start the conversation in a very human-like way, but we also made a decision that when we get to a point where it's really discussing details, that's where we draw the line. That's when they need to speak to a person. So then the AI is able to say, hey, I want to
Hmm.
get you in contact with one of my reps. And we work through, depending upon what our client prefers, either the AI arranges a time, they have that conversation with the prospective client, or they share a link where they can book a call. So
Hmm.
just kind of carving out a very specific lane. The middle of it is what I like to refer to it as, Eric. So the AI is not starting conversations with leads. It's not discussing details of transactions. Its role really is to play the middle, answer those initial questions that might be out there, and guide the prospective client towards speaking with the right expert.
Hmm. I have a million questions, but I don't want to dive too deep into. We could talk offline, and people could reach out to you when it comes to Lead Reviver for sure. It sounds like a really powerful tool, something that I personally would need for sure. But I do want to highlight something that you made me realize. I've been getting multiple emails, and I think that what you're doing is powerful, but then also if done incorrectly, because it's really hard to kind of like tweak and modify this to
Oh yeah.
perfection, but you can get there for sure, I imagine. But I've received emails, Tim, where it says, "Hey, heard your XYZ podcast, that I was a guest on," and then they'll say, "My colleague Joe thought you'd be a great fit for our show." And then if you scroll underneath it is a thread of just one other email from Joe
Hmm.
that says, hey, John, I found Eric on LinkedIn. So there was my spidey senses was going off because I looked the guy up and he had a profile. So you're kind of like connecting
Yeah.
all the dots for me because that person had a profile. And I was like, something still feels a little off. And then a
Yeah.
couple weeks later, it happened again from a different company. So I was like, oh, this is a company that's leveraging AI and this is their strategy because I'm seeing the template and it's a different company. So
Yeah.
anyway, is that, from your
That's a real
expertise, it's like,
thing. No,
yeah,
that's a real thing. And it can work, right? It's
yeah,
just I think every founder has to answer the question, what is right for you? And so for many of these things, I had to wrestle with what can I sleep at night with? And it's actually, some of the things that we bounced off of our clients. Like, what are some of the things that from your perspective that could go wrong with this? And then having those conversations like, yeah, no, I don't think it's worth it. And, it's going to be something that we constantly have to deal with. Now there's at the time that we launched, there was not voice AI. There is voice AI now. So now you have the ability to have someone that's talking, not just sending emails or text messages. So we're constantly going to be faced with these decisions on what's okay and what's not. And those are not easy decisions to make.
yeah. Do you find answers, in your life, but then in this particular case, in your business, where you pray on something like this, like, should we create profiles or should we do fake, tech, email threads, whatever it is? Does this ever happen to you where you just happen to open up, the book and there it is. There's a scripture or there was a sermon you just heard that kind of aligns with a question or a prayer that you've been seeking?
Yes, 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 and more yes. And I'm so thankful for those moments. I just feel like those are God winks. Those are, instances where God realizes that we're in tension with something and he's helping to guide us to the best decision. I think the tougher moments are when we don't have those. There have been times in my life where I was seeking answers. I was seeking clarity and it just seemed to be silent. And so when you're in those moments, it's like, wow, I wish there would be something that would come along and kind of point me in the right direction. But what I've realized, Eric, is the more time, and I'm not sure why this is important to share, but maybe there's someone watching us and listening to us that needs this. The more time that I spend with God, the more I am able to hear, the more I see those gentle reminders, or, someone will call me or text me and say, hey, I was thinking about you. And it actually happened this morning. There's this decision that I've been wrestling with personally. And I've been talking to a couple of people, and then out of nowhere, someone that I respect greatly forwarded me this email. Hey, did you see this? Maybe we should catch up next week and talk about this. And I'm like, God, that's got to be you, because I've said nothing to them about it. But what I have found, again, is the more that I press in, the more that I spend time with God, the more that I pray, the more that I read my Bible, the more that I intentionally ask him to direct my steps, the more those moments happen.
I love that. It reminds me of the analogy that I love where, if your mother calls you or your father or whoever, your spouse, and you know their voice very well.
Oh, yeah.
So you'd recognize the old school phones, not the cell phones, but you pick up the wall off the kitchen. Pick up the phone off the kitchen wall. And you know who it is right away, right?
Yeah.
But if that's because you have conversations, you have a relationship with them. And then I love that. If you're not speaking to God often enough, you're not going to recognize his voice. Who's this?
Yeah, exactly.
Wrong number.
Exactly. And I think that's the tough part is sometimes we are so busy with all the things that are on our list personally and professionally that finding the time to carve out feels challenging. But what I've learned, and it's taken me a while to get here, Eric. So if you're watching us, listening to us, and you're wrestling with this, please don't take as long as I did. But what I found is that it's actually the fastest path to what it is that we want. Because if we spend so much time trying to find the answers on our own, we are so prone to make mistakes. That's going to lead to regret. It's going to lead to rework in many instances, or there's fallout relationally. So it seems sometimes like it's contrary to what we're trying to accomplish, but many times taking the time to spend with God actually gets you to where you want to be faster than you would otherwise.
Yeah. And when two or more are, in pray, that is so important too. Have you been able to, and this was one of the biggest hurdles for me in the beginning, transitioning from, my secular life and business to now giving it all to him, bringing others from the team into the fold of prayer.
Yeah.
Was that from day one for you, or was that something that you had to decide along the way?
So it's an interesting question, because even though most of my businesses are very front and center with my faith, and our principles and our values are rooted in that, that's not how it started. When I started my first side hustle back in 2009, I had zero intentions of it being a faith-driven business. But here's one of the things that happens, kind of ties back to something that we just talked about, is the things that you do tend to kind of inform your life and show up, right? It's just a part of who you are. And so I can remember my first business, my first side hustle was fitness. And I can remember just feeling this urge like that we should start our workout with prayer. I'm like, well, why? I don't know why we're doing it. I mean, it was a part of a church group, but still, it wasn't that common in those days for a workout session to start with prayer. But I just felt like, this is something that we should do. And then it evolved to we start and we end with prayer. So I would kick off the prayer, do our workout, and then someone else from the group would close us out in prayer. And here's the thing, people started saying that there was something that they appreciated, that they actually enjoyed, that was a part of what we did. And so it's just something that I didn't plan it, but I think it's because of how I was raised, how I grew up, and how important I knew prayer was, that it just kind of naturally flowed into my businesses. And it's something that often actually catches people off guard, depending on the context that we're in. But it also, believe it or not, also sets you apart because, when you pray for a meeting or you pray for someone, it's an opportunity for them to see your heart and your love for God and for them, even though it might be the first time that you're having a conversation with them. So for me, yes, it's been since the very beginning. And it's actually been such a blessing to me and for those that I've talked with, whether they ended up being clients or not.
So good. I appreciate that. So good. As we get closer to the end of our time, and I appreciate this conversation so much, I'm like, we got to do a part 2. The
time flies.
People are creating content, and I remember struggling with this myself. I wrote this, I wrote this blog article, or, AI, I'm only using 20% of it, but then it becomes 30 and then all of it becomes 80. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, it's writing in my voice, and it wrote 100% of it.
Right?
Yeah. It's like, it knows me and it is learning. Right. So what are your methodologies behind, what's your philosophy behind that? I mean, and what are some of the tactical tools you can recommend to people as far as like how you create content for business using AI?
Yeah. I think, one of the best, and I wish I could remember the gentleman's name, but this was very early in the kind of Chat GPT launch. It was probably late 2023, 2024, but this was someone that's very, very entrenched in the AI world. And they were asked this exact question, like, well, shouldn't you have to disclose every time you use AI that this is AI that has written this? And I loved his answer because I thought it was brilliant. He says, well, it depends on the context. It depends on the environment that you are in. And then he went on to say that, hey, we've been using AI tools to help us write for a long time, even though we don't often realize it. Things like Grammarly are AI tools that help us with spelling and with grammar. Then I think about one of my side hustles was helping Christian authors. And sometimes they wrote their own book, and sometimes we hired a ghostwriter to write their own book. Some of the preachers and teachers and business leaders that we know and love don't write their own books, but their name is still on the front, right? So I think the answer that he gave is so brilliant because it helped me to realize, hey, even though it feels new, this is something that we've been dealing with all along. And so it becomes a personal question of, in your context, is it unusual to leverage AI in this way? And if it is, then it probably merits a disclosure to say, hey, this was partly, and I see this all the time, partly created by AI, or even some of the exchanges. And it's often when it's done from an email or a text standpoint, if they haven't trained it to the level that they need to, it's often really, really clear that it's AI because of how that conversation is transpiring. But I also see some companies include links and they say parts of this message may be handled by AI, right? On homes, on sites where you're listing your home, if the images are created by AI, there's normally a little teeny note. Your mouth is like, I know that because I'm looking for a house right now. And I see in the corner, image created by it, but it's really, really little. You can hardly see it. So some of the images that you see online for a home that's being staged for sale are not real images. They are AI created images. So I think when there is potential for it to do harm, if you do not disclose, I think is my guiding principle, then I think you should do that. In my space, where people are writing books and doing marketing, it's pretty common. I think it's a commonly expected practice. It's a best demonstrated practice. So I don't really see it as much in that space. So I think you have to know the audience that's receiving your content and ask yourself, would it do harm? Would it be misleading to them if I didn't disclose? And if that is the case, then I think you absolutely should at least credit AI for the work that's being done.
Yeah, that's good. I love how all of this and, really reflects your values, right? Especially as a Christian, reflects your values of integrity and honesty and truth. So thank you for that. And I hope that other people, when using these tools and reminding themselves that these are tools and these aren't living beings
No.
with a spirit and a soul like we,
No.
they are tools that are there for our, for use and to create to help us become more efficient and to give us some of our time back. Here's one side note. They have recently been, and I say they because there still needs to be a human involved, are taking songs and have AI creating versions of these songs. So say a Metallica song or a Pearl Jam song, and they're giving it a Motown vibe. Yeah. Not just vibe, like legit Motown. The singer, the sax, everything about it is Motown. And I am loving it and hating it.
At the same time.
Hating it too. Because I'm like, okay, everything AI is creating doesn't hit me here. It doesn't hit me in a way where I read a blog or I read a book. Music is a totally different field. And now you're speaking to my soul and I'm getting mad about that.
Right? It is crazy. I've seen it too. It's just amazing what it can do. I remember being on YouTube, I don't know, maybe 6 or so months ago. And I was watching this video and I was like, that's not really Rihanna, but it looks like it's Rihanna. It sounds like it's Rihanna. It's a completely different song. And then I started looking at the comments and they were like, this has got to be AI. And so now we're in this space, right? That's the other kind of side effect of this is now we're constantly questioning what's real and what's not. And we're trying to look for clues. And like, it's just an interesting place to be where now you second guess everything. And everything. That's only going to get worse. And so leading with authenticity and people being able to see your heart. And one other thing that I just want to underscore before we wrap up here, Eric, you are right. AI does not have a soul. It does not have the Holy Spirit in it. And we have to remind ourselves of that because it's getting better and better every day. It's getting to the point where like, wow, that, like you said, it's pretty good. It's got my voice. It's amazing, right? But we still have to remember that it does not have the Holy Spirit in it. And so we must still do that check. We must still practice discernment because it's getting crazy and crazier out here. Yeah.
It is. And, between automated driving cars and deliveries at your door, whether it's a drone or an Android, it's gonna be something in our lifetime we couldn't even begin to imagine as a child. This was all science fiction, truly.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So I want to end on a little bit of a fun segment here called Burn or Bless. So I'm going to throw out a topic to you.
Okay.
And you say burn or bless it. And then you'll have the opportunity to expand on one of them, because you're going to want to back up why you said burn or bless.
Okay.
But then at the end, you choose one. Okay.
Okay.
Electronic vehicles.
Burn.
Oh, this is relevant to what we were saying before. Androids, humanoid robots.
Bless with caveats.
That might be the one you expand on. I know where you're going. Hollywood's in big trouble. So Hollywood.
Bless.
Okay, since this has been the topic all along, AI.
Bless.
Okay. The space program.
Burn.
Mainstream media.
Oh, that's tough. Bless.
Okay. Which one do you want to expand on?
Oh, gosh, it's so hard because there's so many. Oh, there's so many. I'm going to pick one that probably wouldn't be expected. I'm going to pick Hollywood.
Okay.
And the reason that I'm going to pick Hollywood, and the reason that I say bless, is even with all of its challenges, movies, film, TV has the opportunity to, like you talked about, music has the opportunity to touch people in ways that a person standing behind a pulpit, a person handing out tracts or shouting on the street will never do. And there are some amazing movies that have been released, and I believe more that are still to come from faith-driven leaders that want to make an impact through TV and film. And we need them to do that because they are going to reach people that we otherwise would not be able to reach.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I don't know the statistics, I have to find it, but Christian content is on the rise for sure. And more people, and I think it's on the rise because we're hungry for it.
Yeah.
Right? We want more of it. The last huge animated, well, it may have changed recently, that involved everyone, from Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey, maybe it was Elton John. I forget. Everybody was in this movie and soundtrack was The Prince of Egypt. Do you remember that? I think it was 1999.
Yeah, I do. Wow, that's taking it back for sure.
and everybody went to see it. It didn't matter, right? Nobody was arguments.
Yeah.
And nothing like that has, I think there's been some, but I think there's a revival. And I know that is, let's end on that note, Tam. Revival. How important is that? And how are you approaching revival?
Yeah, I think it's super important because as you've shared, people are hungry and they don't always realize what they are hungry for. They're seeing everything that's going on in the world. They're struggling in their homes, in their businesses, raising their children, dealing with their own mental health challenges or physical challenges, and people are hungry. And when people are hungry, they start looking for answers. And I think this is the time that us as faith-driven leaders need to be on hyper alert for opportunities to be a blessing to others. And sometimes it may mean inviting them to church or sharing a certain sermon with them. But sometimes it's the example that we see in scripture of Jesus just meeting people where they were, just seeing them and valuing them, letting them know that, even though we might be on different side of the tracks, so to say, you are valuable, you are worthy, and I want to help you. We need to be looking for these opportunities for revival. If it's on a grand scale, great. But what about the opportunities that exist every day when you go to the grocery store, when you're waiting in the line, when you are waiting for your car, when someone's having a bad day and it's really, really tough? You want to snap back at them, but it's also an opportunity to show the love of Christ. I believe that there are so many opportunities for revival staring us in the face every single day.
So good. Thank you for that. And thank you for this conversation. What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, so I would love for you to connect with me on LinkedIn. That is the platform that I hang out the most these days. If you look for Tamara Jackson, you will see me there. There I talk about things like integrating faith and business. One of my favorite topics right now is how we make God-honoring decisions in the workplace. So I'd love for you to follow me there, subscribe to my newsletter, and tell me what you think. Join the conversation.
Yeah. Again, thank you, Tam, for being here. Thank you for all that, and appreciate the conversation. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Eric. It's been fun.
If you were inspired or you learned something new today, please give us a like or a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. If you want to learn more about how to build your YouTube channel, your personal brand or podcast, hit us up at info@onairbrands.com. That's info@onairbrands.com so that we can find ways that we can help you. I'm Eric Cabral, and I hope that I added value in your life today.